All right. Well, since it's 6:02, I'm going to begin the webinar. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Bayshore Bikeway Barrio Logan segment construction information session. My name is Stephen Fordham. I am the construction manager for this project. I will be assisting our project manager, Dinar Usenova, and she is the project manager for the SANDAG project. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. And before we get started with this presentation, we're going to begin a simultaneous Spanish interpretation. So I'm going to hand it over to our interpreter, Vinca, to explain that process, and then we'll go over some housekeeping items. Vinca?
Good evening, everyone. We have Spanish interpretation available, and as you can see at the bottom of your screen, you'll see a globe that shows interpretation. You're going to want to click on that globe and select your language. In case it's English, you leave it in English. If it's Spanish, then you'll need to do it in Spanish. Para hacer uso del servicio de interpretación, va a necesitar bajar hasta la parte de abajo de su pantalla al globo terráqueo y luego puede hacer clic ahí y seleccionar el idioma de español en la palabra en inglés, Spanish, para escuchar la presentación en español. Gracias.
All right. Thank you, Vinca. And for a bit of housekeeping right now, I'm going to share SANDAG's equity statement. As SANDAG, we hold ourselves accountable to communities we serve. We acknowledge we have much to learn and much to change. We firmly uphold equity and inclusion of every person in San Diego region. This includes historically underserved, systemically marginalized groups impacted by actions and inactions at all levels of our government and society. We have an obligation to eliminate disparities and ensure that safe, healthy, accessible, and inclusive opportunities are available to everyone. We're committed to creating a San Diego region where every person who visits, works, and lives can thrive. Now for part of our agenda and housekeeping. During the next hour, we'll be spending approximately 20 to 30 minutes sharing an overview of the Bayshore Bikeway Barrio Logan segment project and use the second half to answer any questions you may have. The Q&A will be conducted via the Q&A function at the end of the Zoom presentation. Now I'd like to share a few guidelines and housekeeping items before we begin. As always, please be respectful when sharing your comments. Inappropriate language will not be permitted, and disruptive participants will be removed from the webinar. If you are having a technical problem, please send a message via the chat. Meeting hosts will work with you to ensure you can get connected. And in a moment, we'll begin our presentation, which is also being led in Spanish by our interpreter, Vinca, in the Spanish language channel. Throughout the presentation, we'll collect feedback through polling question feature on Zoom, and we'll move forward into the Q&A portion of the meeting to address your questions directly before we close for the evening. The QR code on this slide links to the project website. If you want to check out about more information that we have as we go, you may also find some questions and answers on that project webpage. And to access the project webpage, you can either scan the QR code using the camera on your smartphone, and there'll also be a link, which is the same QR code in the chat. So I'm going to do our first poll number one, and kind of before we begin the poll, we'd just like to figure out how everyone learned about this construction information. And while our poll is live, our team works hard to get information to a wide range of mediums, and we are always looking for feedback. The most effective ways to reach people and stay in the know with projects like this. So I guess we'll conduct our poll right now. We'll give it a minute. And so to me, we're gaining, let's see. Well, it seems our largest poll, still seems that email is working the best. So it looks like people were able to log on and get information through the SANDAG website. So it seems like email is the way to go, and then social media was second, and our postcard mailer was a distant third. So, well, thank you for the participation in that. All right, I'm going to share the results. All right. All right. So to give you a little more background on SANDAG and what we do, our 2021 regional plan is going to make many improvements and enhancements possible. If you aren't aware of the new possibilities outlined in the plan, you can head over to the San Diego Regional Plan website, and we'll include a link to that page. Tonight, we'll be sharing information about the construction of the Bayshore Bikeway Barrio Logan segment, and this project is part of the SANDAG Regional Action Program. SANDAG has a wide range of projects that are underway as part of the Go by Bike Regional Plan Network. In 2022, we've already completed 11 miles of new bikeways with the opening of the 4th and 5th Avenue bikeways, as well as the Mead Bikeway, or Georgia Mead Bikeway, and Landis Bikeway. Although I've only been with SANDAG for a couple of years, I have 27 years in construction management, and over this last 2 years with SANDAG, I'm proud to have helped advance several of these recently completed bikeway projects in the city of San Diego. Recently, SANDAG broke ground on 2 new bike projects, the Pershing Avenue bike project in January, and with the construction starting on this Barrio Logan segment, the Bayshore Bikeway this month, we now have more than 4.5 miles of bikeway under construction. Also, during this year, SANDAG expects to start construction on 6 or more bikeway projects within the next year, including Border to Bayshore, Eastern Hillcrest Bikeways, Imperial Avenue Bikeway, University Bikeway, Orange Bikeway, and Phase 3 of the Inland Rail Trail along the Sprinter line up in North County. And today, these projects will represent approximately an additional 22 miles of bikeways in our region. So we're going to do a second poll. And after and speaking of all the SANDAG bikeway projects in progress, we're going to conduct a second poll to hear about what you want to hear about any upcoming milestones or additional bike projects. All righty. Well, to no surprise, I think most people are interested in the Bayshore Bikeway Barrio Logan segment. Since we're all in this meeting to specifically learn about this project. The next would be Border to Bayshore, and as I mentioned that in the previous slide, that project will be kicking off a little bit later this year with SANDAG. I would also like to now turn the rest of this presentation over to my colleague, Dinara Usenova, from SANDAG, and to share more about the Bayshore Bikeway Barrio Logan project and to what to expect during construction.
Thank you, Stephen. Hi, everyone. My name is Dinara, and I've been an engineer and project manager for the past 5 years. At SANDAG, I worked on various projects throughout the region, from the Mid-Coast Trolley extension that goes all the way to UTC area, as well as regional fiber. And I'm excited to be involved in the Bayshore Bikeway Barrio Logan project because it will benefit so many people. That's one of the reasons I love my work. I get to see projects develop from concept to reality and participate in exciting state-of-the-art transportation initiatives that will benefit San Diegans now and in the future. Now we will talk about the Barrio Logan segment of the Bayshore Bikeway so you can learn more about the project and what to expect during construction. Next slide, please. You can see on this project map that the new 2.3 mile Barrio Logan segment of Bayshore Bikeway will extend along the Harbor Drive between Park Boulevard and 32nd Street. This project will complete a vital connection of the Bayshore Bikeway through the Barrio Logan neighborhood between downtown San Diego and National City. This transformational project will improve safety for people biking, walking, rolling, and driving along Harbor Drive. It will make it more comfortable and convenient to connect to entertainment options and employment centers, as well as several trolley stops in the area. By closing a critical gap in the regional bike network, the Barrio Logan segment of the Bayshore Bikeway will create a safe, active transportation option for people traveling to regional and community destinations, such as downtown San Diego, the Bayfront Promenade, Embarcadero Convention Center, Petco Park, the Barrio Logan neighborhood, and its vibrant retail shops and local parks and restaurants, large employers such as Naval Base San Diego and the National Steel and Shipbuilding Company known as NASCO, and so much more. This will be a two-way multi-use path that people can use whether they're biking, walking, or rolling. The bikeway will include 10-foot paved path with 2-foot paved shoulders on either side. The project includes additional roadway enhancements and safety features, including pavement rehabilitation, stormwater drainage improvements, traffic signal updates, railroad safety improvements, and accessibility upgrades to increase mobility options. And now Stephen will ask you 2 more questions for our final poll of the evening.
All right, so the 2 questions is, how often do you travel along Harbor Drive? And that would be either daily, weekly, or never. And then secondly, what is your trip purpose, whether it's work, leisure, errands, or other? All right, well, I think the quick poll, we've got 83% participation. So it looks like everyone travels at least weekly down the Barrio segment. And then for the greatest use in this area would be for leisure, and that's exciting. So that makes me great. I love biking, and I know that many other people do. And so I think that's fantastic. So I'm going to turn this back over to Dinara, and we'll move forward with the presentation.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm now going to highlight some of the many features and enhancements of the bikeway by showing you the plans at several different locations. First, let's look at Harbor Drive and Cesar Chavez Parkway. Here you can see the existing conditions of how the intersection looks today. And on the next slide, please, you can see the intersection, what the intersection will look like post-construction. From Park Boulevard, which is the northern segment of the project, to Cesar Chavez Parkway, the bikeway will be on the western side of Harbor Drive. And at Cesar Chavez Parkway, it will switch sides of the road and continue on eastern side of the Harbor Drive, all the way to 32nd Street, where it will connect to an existing Class 1 bikeway. Next slide, please. The very first railroad crossing that will be improved is BNSF grade crossing, BNSF Harbor Drive grade crossing located between Schley Street and 28th Street. And this is how the current condition look like. You can see it on this slide. Next slide, please. You can see that the bikeway will cross over the railroad tracks at a perpendicular angle on the slide. And you can see where the bikeway crosses their railroad tracks in the upper right-hand corner with yellow striping marks. Improvements will be added to this area to increase safety around the railroad tracks, including signal updates and changes to the railroad crossing gates. The railroad crossing gates are the arms that drop down to restrict access to the tracks when the train is approaching and crossing, and draw back up when access to cross the tracks is permitted and when a train is not nearby. Next slide, please. Another significant change that will be made as part of this project is the intersection of Harbor Drive and 32nd Street. Here you can see the existing conditions with elevated pedestrian bridges along the north and east side of the intersection. And on the next slide, please, you can see the future conditions that illustrate how it will look like when construction is complete. As part of this bikeway project, we will be removing existing pedestrian bridges as they are not ADA compliant and replacing them with ADA compliant curb ramps and crosswalks. These changes will also require improvements to the railroad crossing gates, which will be included. Altogether, the replacement of the pedestrian bridges with street-level crossings will improve and ease access for people with mobility limitations or disabilities and for people biking and walking. Next slide, please. Here you can see the actual photos of the existing pedestrian bridges that will be removed during construction of the bikeway project. Next slide, please. So it helps to think of a project in terms of major architectural pieces, right? And on the northern segment of the project is the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal Bridge that you see on the slide. These drawings highlight the changes that will be made to the bridge to accommodate the new multi-use path that will be located on the western side of Harbor Drive, as I mentioned before, between Park Boulevard and Cesar Chavez Parkway. Next slide, please. Near the southern end of the project is the Choice Creek Bridge. And these drawings highlight the changes that will be made to this bridge for the bikeway as well. Here, the bikeway will be located on the eastern side of Harbor Drive, looking south on the left side, and looking north, it will be on the right side. As I mentioned before, the bikeway will be located on the eastern side of Harbor Drive, on the southern section of the project between Cesar Chavez Parkway and 32nd Street. Next slide, please. So we typically hear many questions about trees and landscaping that will be included in our bikeway projects. And the project includes plans to plant approximately 28 trees across 3 different species that are shown on the slide. And they are cork oak, fern pine, and flowering plum. These trees were selected in consistency with the Barrio Logan community plan and the City of San Diego's street tree selection guide. Next slide, please. It will take approximately 2 years to build the project. And the key word here is approximately. The project is anticipated to open in 2024. And now we would like to discuss what you can expect during that time. Obviously, some construction area traffic control, detours, some noise, lights for any night work, bike lanes and vehicle lane closures, flaggers to protect our construction workers around railroad, parking restrictions during work, and so on. Next slide, please. In working closely with the construction team and City of San Diego, we've developed a construction traffic control plan that will include 1 northbound and 2 southbound travel lanes on Harbor Drive between Cesar Chavez Parkway and Sicard Street to be shared by people driving and biking. Intermittent vehicle and bike lane closures, temporary median work as shown in orange on the slide, and it will be separated from travel lanes with concrete barriers. And you will observe some speed limit reduction from 35 miles per hour to 30 miles per hour during construction. Crews began implementing the temporary traffic control last week from Cesar Chavez to 28th Street along the median, where concrete, curb, and gutter work will be done. It will take approximately 3 months to complete this phase, and then work will proceed south of 28th Street. Eventually, once the median is narrowed in order to fit in Class 1 bikeway, the traffic will be shifted outward to construct the multi-use path. We recognize that this is a significant change, but it is necessary to have an efficient construction schedule, as the goal is to minimize the total amount of time construction will take. On-street parking during construction will be reduced intermittently throughout the project area, depending on construction activities. Notices including no parking signs will be placed in advance to indicate where and when street parking limitations will be in effect. Please keep in mind that phasing and construction schedules are subject to change because of the dynamic nature of large construction projects. Circumstances that can affect project timelines and phase scheduling may include weather conditions, multi-party coordination efforts, project complexity, supply chain or material shortages, and or other unexpected issues that arise during construction. And now I'm going to hand it back to Stephen as we prepare to answer your questions. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Dinara. And thank you everyone for the questions you've submitted so far. We'll do our best to respond to as many questions as we can in the time remaining for this evening. And before we get to the Q&A section, I would like to invite you all to sign up and receive our monthly construction update emails if you have not already. This is the best way to remain informed about recent and upcoming construction activities and stay apprised of any changes to the project schedule throughout construction. To sign up, please visit sandag.org/subscribe. Enter your contact information and be sure to select the box for Bayshore Bikeway under the Bikeway Walkway project sections. The presentation slides are from our information session this evening have been posted on the project website in English and Spanish at keepmovingsandiego.com/Bayshore Bikeway. And a link to the website will be posted in the chat. And additionally, recordings of tonight's meetings will in both English and Spanish will be posted to the website by the end of this week. So I think now we'd like to move into the question and answer portion. Looks like we have one question first, and that question is, why isn't the project going to extend down to West 8th Street to meet with the north end of the last segment that was built? And so with that, the existing Bayshore Bikeway does extend between 8th Street and 32nd Street, and there is a two-way multi-use path along the east side of Harbor Drive in this location already. So, and then a following question would be, when can we expect the extension all the way to Civic Center National City? As either Dinara or I mentioned earlier in the presentation, there's two additional projects coming. One would be border to Bayshore, and then the Imperial Avenue project, and those are going to help continue that down towards the National City section, but those projects would be released into construction a little later this year. And if anyone has any other questions, just, now that we're doing it, the best way to do it would be you can locate the Q&A tool at the bottom of your screen in the toolbar and type in your question in the box one at a time. And we will be actively monitoring the chat or we won't be actively monitoring the chat during this time. So instead we would like you to focus and put your questions into the Q&A box. We'll do our best to respond to these. And then, as we discussed earlier, we'll be recording all of these questions we receive. And if your question is not answered or addressed, we will develop a comprehensive Q&A document that will be posted to the website within the next few weeks. When it is ready to be posted to the project website, we will also highlight this document in an email we will send to anyone who signed up to receive the emails on our project distribution list. And then you can also contact us via gobybike@sandag.org at any time to ask us questions you may have about the project. Okay, so the one question, we have one question that says, hi, the 3 species to be planted, are they rooty trees that like to create pavement bumps? I am not a landscape architect. I think we're gonna have to maybe get back to that question. I think the trees were initially chosen as they were part of the
Barrio Logan community plan.
Yeah, Barrio Logan community plan from 2014. I know it was revised recently, but these plans were created and approved by the city prior to the 2021 Barrio Logan Community Plan. Let's see. Why and where does the bikeway switch to different sides of the street, and will cyclists have priority at signals?
So as we mentioned before, the bikeway will switch from western side of Harbor Drive at Cesar Chavez Parkway, and will continue on eastern side of Harbor Drive. Why it was decided, that was decided during the planning phase of the project. And yeah, and then what was the second question? Second part of the question, Stephen?
Oh, will cyclists have priority at signals?
And Kirk, can you please remind me what we had as traffic signals go at that intersection?
Yeah, hi, this is Kirk Bradbury. I'm a civil engineer and a designer on the project. As far as the first question goes about why does the project switch sides of Harbor Drive, it's primarily because up at Harbor Drive and Park Boulevard, the Park Boulevard is being opened across the railroad tracks. You might be familiar with that project by San Diego or Civic Communities. And so therefore there's a restriction from pedestrians up at the Harbor Drive and Park Boulevard intersection in proximity to that new grade crossing. So therefore we put the bike path on the side closer to the Hilton Hotel and away from Petco Park. And at the other end of the project at 32nd Street, we wanted to connect to the existing bike path that Stephen mentioned in response to a question. And so therefore we need to switch over Harbor Drive. And so we switched over about halfway along the project corridor at Cesar Chavez Parkway. With regard to priority for cyclists, yes, at each of the signalized intersections, we're implementing something called leading pedestrian interval. And what that does is it does turn the green the green indicator for peds and bikes green earlier than the vehicles get a green symbol. And so it allows the bikes and pedestrians to establish a presence out in the crosswalk and provides more visibility. And it's considered a safer approach for crosswalks for bikes and peds.
All right, and so the next question would be, are Class 1 bike lanes the only options during the construction period? I don't quite, well, currently right now for our project for Bayshore Bikeway, there's some basically striped bike lanes in this area, but during construction, there's definitely going to be impacts. Bicyclists will still have, rights of way like normal vehicles. However, our ultimately to complete construction would be to produce to construct a Class 1 bikeway where the bicyclists are physically separated from the traffic. We may end up trying to look at that question a little closer and then provide that on the project website. And so let's see, I have another one. I think the bikeway along Tidelands Avenue north of Pepper Park stays on the road for a couple of blocks and it traverses a couple of diagonal rail tracks. Any plan on improving the diagonal track crossing? There tends to be pavement bumps at these at the connections. Again, I'm not 100% familiar, but we have, as I mentioned, we have 6 additional bikeway projects starting mostly in the city of San Diego. There's one up in in Vista for the Inland Rail Trail. And at any point in time where we construct a bikeway that would have a crossing of a rail line, our key goal is to make that crossing perpendicular with signals and new new and improvements in order to make the bikeway the smoothest for the bikers crossing the tracks at that location or whatever location there may be. Let's see. How do the new crosswalks at 32nd Street impact the traffic and the intersection and adjacent intersections, and how do they make it easier? And how does it make it safer? So currently, as Dinara had mentioned, we have two of the pedestrian bridges, but they are not ADA compliant. And so when we're going to demolish those bridges and then construct ADA compliant traffic ramps and sidewalks, and then the signaling in that intersection will change to provide pedestrians access either across Harbor Drive and or across 32nd Street. And then if you have anything to add to that, it would be appreciated.
Yeah, sure, Stephen. As far as impacts to traffic by removing those pedestrian bridges, so yes, when we do put the pedestrians down in crosswalks, it does change the signal timing slightly. There are no new vehicles being added to the intersection by the project, but the timing does change slightly. And I believe the changes will be imperceptible to most people. We did do a traffic study and did a detailed analysis of a before and after. And the changes to the traffic are super minor. And so that's been analyzed. As far as how does it make it safer? Well, I would say that removing the ped bridges makes it better for one, because now ADA challenged individuals will be able to cross Harbor Drive and 32nd Street. And then part of the project is to make it safer based upon the fact that the ped bridges are being removed. And that's where a lot of the railroad improvements come in. We've been coordinating with BNSF Railway and MTS for the trolley and making changes to their railroad signaling system that will notify the traffic signal controller earlier when trains are on approach. And that way the pedestrian signals would stop a ped or a cyclist from entering into the crosswalk when the train is on its way, and it allows the vehicles to clear the tracks and the trains can cross without any vehicles stopped on the tracks. So that entire system makes the intersection safer, and we need to do so to provide the ADA component.
Thank you, Kurt. The next question is kind of more of a statement. Well, it's a question that says, wait, isn't the whole bike lane supposed to be from 32nd Street to Cesar Chavez on the east side? And yes, that is correct. So basically from Park Boulevard to Cesar Chavez Parkway, the Class 1 bike lane is on the west side of Harbor Drive. And at that intersection at Cesar Chavez Parkway, it moves to the east side of Harbor Drive and continues all the way down to 32nd Street. So yes, that is correct. And then let's see the next one. That is terrible to switch the west to the west near Park Boulevard, as there is a bike lane in the center of the trolley tracks from 5th to Market. This disconnected zigzagging makes more traffic interactions between cars. Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I understand that there is a bike lane on that east side. Kirk, I don't know if there was a reason, but the bike lane that's the current Bayshore Bikeway where we pick up is on the west side of Harbor Drive, and that's why we pick it up at Park Boulevard and head south. I don't know if Kirk, you had any other thing to add to that question.
Well, I'm not really sure I understand the situation that's been described, but I did mention earlier about why we end the project construction at in front of the Hilton Hotel parking garage there at Park and Harbor. And I can say that the Bayshore Bikeway at that point does continue, and it continues toward the bay behind the convention center. It's called the Bayfront Promenade. So essentially we're connecting to the Bayshore Bikeway that is behind the convention center today. There will be the ability to get onto the Class 2 bike lanes on Harbor Drive, north of the project. But I'm not sure about the zigzagging comment. I'm not familiar with that.
Yeah, thank you, Kirk. Yeah, and yeah, just to restate that this is that, I guess, the Class 2 bikeway that lets you head up into downtown is an option rather than continuing on the Bayshore Bikeway, which goes behind the convention center, and it's called the Promenade. Thanks, Kurt. Let's see. It seems that bikers preferred Tidelands biking this street. Any future plans to add this street to the Bikeshore pathway?
Stephen, can I mention something about that? So
yeah,
there's been a number of questions about Tidelands and Pepper Park and Civic Center Drive, and I believe those are part of the Bayshore Bikeway it's being designed and implemented by the City of National City and not SANDAG. So I think that's why, Stephen, you may not know a lot about that project because it's all City of National City.
Okay, thank you very much. And then go ahead.
So as far as this question goes, what is the plan for I finally can see questions. I didn't see them before. What is the plan for the intersection on NASCO for pedestrians and parking along the road during construction? So right now, you're talking about the 28th Street, and that intersection is currently undergoing design. It's in negotiations with the third parties, with MTS, BNSF, City of San Diego, and other entities. So yeah, so right now the design is undergoing and we are negotiating the terms and improvements, but there will be some railroad and civil and improvements and some traffic signal improvements at that intersection. What did it say? Parking along the road for pedestrians and parking along, are you referring to the parking along the eastern side of Harbor Drive, I'm guessing? If so, then the parking will be temporarily removed to construct Class 1 bikeway, and then it will be added back on. I'm not sure what parking you're referring to.
Dinara, it may be with respect to just all the parking to get to the NASCO entrance. And just for everyone's information, in this meeting, SANDAG, we have contact information, and we have weekly meetings that involve NASCO representatives as well as naval base representatives. So at any point in time, if there's a change or impacts to parking with respect to construction, those representatives for the respective NASCO and the naval station are informed of that, so they can disseminate that information to, I guess, maybe ingress egress locations at both NASCO and naval base in order to help provide any information for the ongoing construction project. And then at the same time, as we mentioned earlier in this presentation, if you could subscribe, you'll be able to receive the emails, which will provide updates to this construction project throughout the duration of the construction. Lastly, it says, I guess we're expecting that north of Park Boulevard, the Bayshore Bikeway would connect to the MLK Promenade on the east side of Harbor Drive between the trolley tracks. Would there be any bike lane extension on the Harbor Drive north to Kentner past the convention center? That stretch by the convention center is really nasty to cycle on as is. And so, Kirk, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that our intention for this bikeway is to connect to the Bayshore Bikeway or the promenade behind the convention center, and then at the same location at the convention center on the east side of the Harbor Drive, there's a Class 2 bikeway lane that helps people continue on, I guess, farther into downtown or in that direction. So I don't know if answered it as good as I could. I don't know, Kirk, if you want to help.
Yeah, I think your answer was good, Stephen. Just to add a little bit more, one thing that's interesting about the MLK Promenade, that was recently removed. That promenade is no longer there between Harbor Drive and the trolley tracks, and it was moved as part of the agreement to open up Park Boulevard across the railroad tracks. And so what there is on Harbor Drive today, north of Park Boulevard, are Class 2 bike lanes, and those will continue after the conclusion of our project. SANDAG doesn't have any plans to improve those Class 2 bike lanes or that stretch of Harbor Drive that I'm aware of. The Class 2 bike lanes will continue to be there. I believe there's a sidewalk fronting the convention center, so PEDs would be out in front of the convention center on that side of Harbor, and bikes in the Class 2 on Harbor.
All right. Okay, and then so the next question is, note that NASCO employees often park their cars blocking the bike lane. It would be nice if design improvements made it so that it was not possible. And so we are constructing a Class 1 bikeway, and so there will be a physical barrier between the cyclists and the vehicles. And so the vehicles will not, the vehicles would, if there's parking there, the parking will be on the west side of the barrier that separates the bike lane to provide parking along the street. So we're not eliminating any parking. However, it'll be fully removed from the bike, so there wouldn't be a possibility for vehicles to block the bikeway.
Could you explain more about what a Class 1 and Class 2 bikeway is? Class 1 is basically when you are on your own dedicated a roadway. You're not sharing it with cars. It's more safe. It's a safe feature. Whereas Class 2, you sharing the road with the cars.
Right.
What sort of warning devices are proposed to alert users of two-way bike path? I'm not sure what you mean by
Dinar,
that.
I think that the bike path, similar to all other bike paths, would probably be, I don't know if we're going to stripe it in two directions, but typically it's essentially, it operates like a street, but it's specifically just for bikes where you're separated, where motor vehicles and bikes are separated.
Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, I think what we'll do is that we can provide a greater explanation of a Class 1, 2, 3, and 4 bike ways. We could potentially do that in this meeting, and we can also provide that information on the project website. Kirk, do you have anything to add with respect to Class 1, 2, and 3 and 4 bikeways?
You're essentially correct. Each of you has described, it's a great question and probably something that we could have addressed earlier. But yeah, Class 1, it's a facility open to pets and bicyclists. It's separated from the roadway, and therefore it's intrinsically safer in that there's not a direct exposure to vehicles, motor vehicles. Class 2 is a striped bike lane at the shoulder of a roadway. That's probably most common that we see out on the streets today. Class 3 is simply a bike route that it's really an unstriped bike lane, but it's been judged to be adequate for bicycles, adjacent to motor vehicles. And then Class 4 is, it's kind of similar to a Class 1 bikeway, except pedestrians aren't allowed on it. But otherwise, it's a separated facility for bikes, separated from the road.
All right. And let's see. Are there any plans for an east-west connector between 5th Avenue Bikeway in Hillcrest and the Eastern Hillcrest Bikeways? I would love to see a separated bikeway along University Avenue, Robinson Avenue, or through Balboa Park across 163. If Chris Kluth is on this, I would defer that question to him. Otherwise, we'll have to provide this on our construction website.
Yeah, hi, Stephen.
Thank you.
This is Chris. Trying to get all my stuff working here. Could you read that question again? I can't see it up anywhere. I could see all the other ones, but not that one.
Certainly. It says, are there any plans for a east-west connector between 5th Avenue Bikeway in Hillcrest and the Eastern Hillcrest Bikeways? I would love to see a separated bikeway along University Avenue, Robinson Avenue, or through Balboa Park across the 163.
That's a great question. Currently, right now, there are no plans by SANDAG to build a class 4 between 5th and the Eastern Hillcrest Bikeway. Unfortunately, the city, I mean, as you know, was able to fill most of that gap with some class 2s, some buffered class 2s, but currently no plans for a class 4 in that segment. Sorry about that.
Do we have any other questions? Like, I don't see questions at all.
I'm not seeing any other questions. We have this meeting or this informational presentation scheduled till 7, but if there are any other meetings, I think we can wrap it up.
Thank you, everyone, for your participation in this construction info session for the Bayshore Bikeway Barrio Logan project. We're really excited about this project, and thank you again for joining us tonight. And for any of the questions that we didn't answer, you're going to see them on the forum on the project website within a week or so. Yeah, we'll look forward to hearing